How's it going? Today was trade deadline. The Canucks made some moves, nothing too significant. They got rid of Gudbranson and picked up Tanner Pearson. He can score the odd goal, although he's coming from a team that was better than ours, so I don't know, give him a little more ice time, maybe he could, do some work for the Canucks. Anyway, that's not what this video is going to be about. This video is going to be about the hockey players specifically signing contracts and, a lot of the implications that go with it. Because, offhand, most people ain't got no clue what, signing $1 million contracts is like. I don't really either. But, I think about it a lot more than they do, because I ain't a loser. Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to point out was, once these young guys, they sign a contract, they sign away a lot of their rights. And, people, they don't understand that. They hear, a $25 million contract for 5 years, or, a massive $100 million contract like Connor McDavid, and they don't understand all the things that entails. I believe, briefly, touched base on this on a few other videos, but there are things that are absolute bullshit about signing contracts like that. For one thing, things that are specifically you're not in control of anymore. That so much is a fact. I know through various means that that's the way it is. We'll take your basic examples. You're going to get a dietitian. They want to make sure that you're eating the right food, that you're not indulging in anything like beverage or anything like that. Understandable. Didn't used to be that way, of course. Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky can attune to that. However, these days, you can't get away from your dietitian. They're going to be lurking everywhere you go. And a body who's worth $100 million like Connor McDavid, he's got shadows following him no matter what he does. He can't get away with anything. They're gonna know if he's used 2 rolls of toilet paper in the last few days or 1. And that's a creepy thought, And when people are worth that kind of money, people, they get creepy about it. And it's like, as a young person signing into one of these things, you don't know that's what's going to happen. And, yeah, it's not good. A little bit of privacy, if you don't mind. Yeah, well, and another thing is, getting back to the dietitian type philosophy and your trainers, making sure you're at your physical peak and all that sort of stuff. A lot of people go, oh, having doctors, treat you for every little ailment you have and making sure you're at peak optimal performance. That's got to be a good thing, right? Well, no, not necessarily. They decide what body type you should have. And it's not simply for what they have mathematically calculated through your biological specs of what you would be best at. So they may determine, well, they want you to weigh X amount, and for X amount of that to be muscle mass or whatever, based on height, bone density, and various other factors. So at one point, you may not even have, the luxury of a choice as to what you want your body to look like. Do you want to be lean, bulky, muscular, defined, slinky? That may not be your options. You, as a hockey player, I'm using it as a pejorative term, you lose the right to make that decision for yourself, because other people will claim, well, no, you'd be physically better if you were faster, or if you were a harder hitter, or this, that, and the other. And, that actually is a significant thing for people who care about how their bodies look. And, obviously there has to be a little bit of egotism in the NHL. So most NHL players have this thing where it is about them and the team they play for and how they want to perceive themselves and others to perceive them. So, being told that, well, your trainers feel that you should have this certain body type, then, that could be a little too much. And not only that, sometimes they don't actually make decisions that are in your best interest. Because the problem with the NHL, as well as every other organization where there's a lot of money in the air, is that talent alone is not what gets you further. It's, walking over the corpses of your enemies. It's tearing people down. That's how it's done. And players on a team, they're the exact same way. They try to be, friendly about it, and gentle competition amongst each other, rivalry, harmless rivalry. But the reality is, they may think that, and as young guys, they're not particularly concerned about it. They're conditioned to be that way. But the trainers that are backing them up, their sponsors, their money men, they're nasty people. Nasty people. And internal fighting within organizations is a very real thing. And, who even knows if most hockey players that, are entering the league are even cognizant of this fact. So when I say other players are tearing other players down, there are specific trainers, because there's, probably hundreds of trainers per team, if, not more. They may be selecting a training program that actually doesn't have the player at their peak optimal performance. They might be deliberately doing that. And, sometimes the player can see that. Top prospect in Vancouver, Dolan, he demanded a trade, I believe, to anywhere out of here. And Brock Besser didn't even want to come here in the first place. And, in hindsight, looking at the history of the Vancouver Canucks, I don't entirely blame him. A lot of things I don't like about the Vancouver Canucks. They're my number one team, but I don't like everything about them. I think you're quite the idiot if you like everything about them. Or you just simply don't know hockey. Because, there's a lot of things about a lot of teams, but Vancouver is one of those teams where, it's impossible to support them 100%, even though the "we are Canucks" rhetoric and, all that kind of stuff. It's like, shut up. And you run into any hockey enthusiast in the city and you contradict their beliefs, and they get super mad at you. And it's like, fuck you. I'm allowed to think what I want. And, I don't think it should be that big a hassle for players to, go get out of Dodge. Like, I don't like this city, I don't like the trainers, I don't like my chances of being successful in this league, in this particular team. And I'm dropping it. I'm out. I think the players should have more rights to do that because, it feels like their destiny is chosen for them. And, there are players that are very, very skillful, the best at what they do, and yet they can't get to the next step. They can't be better because there will always be something inhibiting them from doing that because the forces that be are one step ahead of them. And it's not that they're smarter or better, they simply got there first. And it becomes an impediment. And this squabbling within organizations is very detrimental to the team and the league itself. And the thing is, some people go, well, if they work for the Vancouver Canucks, wouldn't they want them to win the Stanley Cup? Well, yes and no. Of course they want them to win, because then that requires that they win. They make a lot of money doing that. However, they make a lot of money doing other things as well, and they may say, "Oh, well, the chances are very good," which is why teams tank, People go, oh, they tank so they can get #1 pick. That's a reason. It's not the only reason. A thing to consider when, hypothesizing about things that you're not there to see is that it's never as simple as people depict it to be. There's usually multiple reasons, and when there's a lot of money, there's multiple reasons for things. And, there have been teams that have disintegrated through internal fighting, and it has been shown on the sports nets and things like that. I can't think of one of recent. Obviously, when Sean Avery went to Dallas, that was a big issue over there. He got booted out quite quickly. And there's, examples here and there of that. But a lot of times that happens covertly, secretly. Everything's secret. Everything's so hush-hush that, you can learn all the statistical information from hockey and still look like a complete retard because, it's not difficult to learn. Finding out all of Alexander McGillney's stats, that would be easy to do, for example. It's not, training to be a mechanical engineer of some kind or something. It's very easy to access that data. It's more, some work is fun, but it's not all fun. A lot of it's boring. From my point of view, I look at it, I look at myself as more of a philosopher and a hypothesizer, rather than, a bean counter or an actual hockey player or anything like that. But, I do understand some of their own problems because of the problems I have to go through. And, it is the problems of the modern day man, unfortunately. A lot going on, a lot of stuff that you don't even want to know about. The main message I wanted to get in this video is that I don't like being told what to do. Most people don't like being told what to do. I mean, they can handle suggestions going, well, you could be better this way, you could do that, this. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty and they start ordering you to do things that you don't like and don't want to do, and it's not, for hockey players, it's not all on the ice. It's not all in the training room. It's not all how you communicate with the public or with your teammates, your coaches, your trainers, whatever. There's other things too, and I've mentioned it before. It's also women and other things, and it's like, they're there. Their job is not easy. I mean, they're quite fortunate. It's a good job, but it's not an easy job by any stretch. And I think they shouldn't be barked orders at. I guess some players get it worse than others. They are expected more of them. I guess depending on how much money they sign, and that's another thing. When they signed $100 million contracts, it's all, well, what's $100 million worth, really? If, they sign you a contract for $100 million, but it costs $5,000 for you to order a cheeseburger at a McDonald's because you're in a whole different world where they go, you want this? This is the price you're paying for it, and because you're special, we got people watching you, and that's the price you're going to pay for it. And it's like, okay, I guess my money's going to fly a lot faster than it did, and I guess that would happen if you weren't so successful. Didn't do everything you can to the best of your ability and, bring back the Stanley Cup or whatever it is your team specifically wants you to do. Because there are teams that go into every season knowing that they're not going to be, a Stanley Cup successful. And that's a loser way of looking at things. And I don't buy the mentality, oh, but Crosby's so good. Oh, but Jonathan Taves is so good. Alexander Ovechkin's so good. Yes, they are good, but they're also humans. They don't always do everything perfectly. so they will lose. It does happen. And, you know, it's the whole losing control part. It would be fine if you could trust people, but you can't. Somebody could be your friend for years and years and years, and as soon as money gets into the picture, then guess what? They start acting like a cunt. And that's, you know, like, most of these young guys getting into the NHL don't know anybody to start with, or not enough people. And then they get bombarded with all these people and telling them what to do indirectly and directly and subliminally and all that kind of stuff. Controlling the atmosphere around them, you know, where they can't step out of line or question anything because, you know, let's say, you know, hockey players and the flu, for example. That's a real problem, and people don't realize how significantly bad it is for a hockey player. I mean, a hockey player leaves first thing in the morning, you know, has been trying their best. Sometimes I don't, but you know, I'm gonna go with the idea that most hockey players try their best. Who's to say that somebody didn't wipe their nose on their doorknob or something like that? And they go to grab it, and they got something that their body is not accustomed to. Because obviously, you know, they get checked out, blood work, they get their organs tested and things like that. Everything is done, so they will know something specifically that will affect a hockey player. And this is getting back to not being in control of your surroundings, not being able to choose, and it involves the body type and things like that. If they go, well, we're annoyed with this guy because he's not putting up the goals, then the money that they're paying him is not performing. You know, you could do everything right, and it could still, you know, there's still gonna be people who are gonna go, well, I'm out because this guy's not doing what I expected him to do, and therefore I'm mad, or something. And to a normal person, this is absurd, but that's actually what happens when a lot of money is involved in things. And I feel, you know, I do feel a sense of, you know, I don't feel good about what happens to some people when there's money surrounding them. Because, you know, there's accessible money and, you know, actual money and what it's worth for the individual. Because people have to remember money is a simple construct designed to keep the peasants in order. To put a face on the value of specific commodities. That's what money's for. $10 a day could buy you, you know, a burger meal at McDonald's. $10 tomorrow could buy you 1/10 of a burger meal at McDonald's. It could be flipped on and on like a light switch. And, you know, if you're a person who has to live, you know, a very controlled public life, then it's easy for people to come along and put you in situations that sound like, what the hell, did I just end up in the Twilight Zone or something? And, you know, they create mechanisms that inhibit the hockey player, or anyone, I use hockey players for example, from divulging any information as part of the contract. And, you know, this is all crazy talk, but we're talking about an organization with millions of dollars. People get crazy over that kind of money. And it's like, how the fuck do we resolve this problem where everything can smooth out and turn to a relatively normal state? I mean, I realize the hockey players of the 90s, a lot of them were assholes, drunks, incompetent, all those sort of things, and they want to remedy those problems because these guys are on the global stage. Stop being an embarrassment. Not all the hockey players were like that, but some of them were, no doubt about it. Yeah, you can't have them on lockdown where, you know, the penalties will be severe if they even think of doing something that only would offend a crazy person. And I feel like Connor McDavid, I feel tremendously bad for him. He's, a talented hockey player. He's doing everything right, but right now he's not looking too good. He's getting the Mason Raymond when he went through his goal drought kind of look about him, and that I don't feel good looking at things like that. I want to see all players be successful, and I'm not one of these people who thinks that, oh well, everybody's a winner, blah blah blah. You get a trophy for winning, for trying, and this and that and the other. But I don't think the penalties should be so severe, and I don't think there should be internal fighting for one's self-own interest, which is why I'm not a big Pedersen fan. Everyone's sucking up to the guy, and it's like, yeah, well, I don't suck up to anyone for starters, and I most especially don't suck up to anybody who everyone else is sucking up to. He's a young guy, he's got plenty of time to get good or flop on the rest of his career. Who knows? Anything could happen. At this point in time, he hasn't done anything significant in my opinion. Scoring goals, nice. Getting assists, more than a point a game, all good stuff. But guess what? At the end of the day, it's still not enough. So, I'm most certainly not going to go crawling to any of them. And, people do. For some mental reason, that's what they do. And I don't understand it, and I don't think I ever will. Yeah, so I covered a few topics here, talked about things, and I described certain situations because they're more complicated than one might expect. So yeah, anyway, I'll talk to you guys later, and I think I'll have a few more brewskis, and yeah, I'll be on my way. Have a good one.